It is another edition of the On the Mic podcast, and we're going to get right into it. It's as I was so friendly reminded before I started hitting recording, it's not just one fight this weekend, not one event. There's two big events this weekend, and it all begins with UFC 293, Israel Adesanya, Sean Strickland. But there's a lot that I want to talk to today's guest about. She is the one and only. I think she's the host of like 17 different podcasts, including Barbells and Bangers. I try to do it the way you do it. I suck at it.
It's
The one
okay.
and
I
only Bre
changed the name
Eckert.
of it, but it's okay. I
Did you?
literally just changed it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Because
so
everybody thought it
nominated.
was just fitness whenever I had that name. So I was like, well, it's more than just fitness. Like I'm talking to MMA fighters. I'm talking to people who are just like doing cool stuff. So I changed it. Yeah. So it's the BRE pod now. So my name's Bre. So I use my initials to like make the name. So it's the Brilliant Resilient Experience is what it's called now.
I love
And
that.
basically like my theme now of it is like just like sharing my own experiences and then also like talking to people, like especially a lot of fighters. Because I feel like they all have that mindset of like kind of powering through, doing their own thing, like regardless of what people think. So that's kind of, yeah. And then I have my MMA podcast, which is just basically me breaking down the fights and giving my little hot takes. So
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, welcome to the show for the first time.
yeah,
Sorry,
thank
sorry
you.
I butchered the podcast to start off
Oh
great.
no, you're good.
I absolutely love what you do, and I want to just start off there because I think it's so important. People who have watched this show for a while, they know Kelly Murphy of SiriusXM. Like this is a platform where I'm all about like everyone has a platform, everyone has an avenue. So before we get into the fights, by the way, I'm just gonna throw this out there and we'll save it for later. We might be in the middle of the worst combat sports promotion of all time. With this week and Logan Paul and Dylan Dennis, we might be in the middle of the worst fight card promotion of all time. And that's considering Conor said things about Khabib. I think these two will take the cake. But anyways, let's get into what you do and how you got started. Talk to me about how you got started in this sport.
In like with MMA stuff.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. I had been talking about doing an MMA podcast for a while before I actually did it, which I feel like there's probably a lot of other people out there that kind of did the same thing. Whether it be with MMA or whatever it is, just like getting started was always like the biggest obstacle for me. So I've been an MMA fan for a long time. My dad's a big MMA fan. My mom even watches the fights. Like she'll watch Bellator by herself sometimes. Like my parents love MMA. So I kind of grew up around it. But of course, when you're a kid like me and you're rebellious, like you don't really like follow along with whatever your parents like. Like that's not cool. So I didn't get into it until I was probably in my early 20s. I got into MMA. And I think it might have been a Conor fight. It might have been a Tyron Woodley fight. I don't remember. I'm from St. Louis, so Tyron Woodley was like really big here at one point. But yeah, so it might have been one of those two that I saw that I really like started paying more attention after I saw it. One of those fights. I can't remember if it was Conor McGregor or Tyron Woodley, but it was one of those two. And then it even still like I thought it was cool, but I still was like, I don't know about this, and it took me a while to really get into it. And when I really fell in love with MMA was whenever I saw Rose win the belt. That was the moment for me that was like, oh, okay, now I'm really like invested in this because they're 115 pounds. Like, this is like, that's crazy to me. I couldn't even believe it. I was like, there's no way this is happening. And she was like, at the time, like Rose was huge. And she was huge for a while. She's kind of, I guess, lost that a little bit. But for a while, I mean, she was one of the biggest stars in women's MMA. And she probably still is to some degree. But yeah, I think Rose winning the belt, and of course, Rose, like, I don't know, she just has that energy about her too. Like she's just a star. And so when I saw that was when I really started to become invested in it, to where I was watching it like every weekend. I was going and getting a group of friends together to watch the fights. And or even just sitting at home watching them by myself a lot of times. If I couldn't find people that wanted to watch them or whatever, then I'd be like, all right, I'm just going to stay home and watch the fights by myself. And I would do that every weekend. And I would get on Instagram and talk to my friends, or get on Facebook and talk to my friends about the fights. And so that kind of started a little bit. I would say that was probably like 5 years ago when I really started to get into the sport. And then it was probably right before COVID when I started thinking of maybe doing a podcast or something, because there was a few people that I would talk to regularly about the fights, and we would talk our trash, give our predictions and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, wouldn't this be fun to actually just do this as a podcast? And I don't know, I paid a lot of attention to MMA media on Instagram and on social media and stuff like that. So I guess that's where I kind of got the idea from, because I saw other people were doing it. And I was like, oh, that'd be so cool to talk about MMA. But my hesitancy always was well, what do I don't know enough about MMA to feel like I could actually sit there and talk about it and people would want to listen to it. I'm like, I think I have a ways to go before I get to that point. So then I just kind of completely dove into the sport, and I went back and watched a bunch of old fights, went back and watched, Nate Diaz season of Ultimate Fighter and stuff like that. Cause I remember my dad always watched the Ultimate Fighter, and yeah, so I kind of just dove into it from there. And then, I want to say it was last year I decided I wanted to start my podcast, but I wasn't planning on it being an MMA thing. I was just planning on kind of talking about fitness and talking about just motivation and stuff like that. I wasn't even really I was going to talk about MMA, but it wasn't going to be the main theme of it.
Your focus, right?
Yeah. And then once I got going, because I started that podcast in January. Once I got going and I was talking about MMA in my episodes, and then it started to get more and more and more. And then I was like, okay, I think I want to start an MMA podcast now. Because it's once you start one podcast, it's you can just start another one. Yeah.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I'll just do the MMA one. And then, I wasn't sure what was going to come of it. I was like, I don't know. I just feel like this is something I really enjoy doing, breaking down the fights, doing predictions, and not even even when I get them wrong. Because most of the time, you get at least a couple fights wrong. And so, and that's not even why I love it. It's just, I love this sport so much. And I love just following each of these fighters' journey and watching them grow, and just trying to get other people into the sport is another thing that I like to do. Even people that are no, absolutely not, I'm not watching that. I will still continue to remind them that MMA is the coolest sport ever and that they should watch it. So it's I am just so obsessed with the sport, and my knowledge now has come to the point where I do feel okay, now I can actually talk about this, and I can, talk with other people that, whether they cover MMA or whether they're a fighter or whatever, and we can have really good conversations about not only the sport, but also just about other things too. So yeah, so it all kind of happened organically. It took a long time. I mean, I spent the last 5 years in insurance, and I've been in sales for a long time. So that was always consuming most of my time. So this was just a little hobby of mine, but it was it did consume a lot of my time, watching fights and stuff. So I'm well, I'm already spending a lot of time paying attention to this anyways. So I might as well start, sharing it and
running with it.
Yeah. So, but it's really fun. I'm so glad I started doing it because it's my favorite thing ever. Well,
I'm not just saying this to brown nose and fluff you up or anything, but I'm happy you started doing it because I see a lot of similarities between you and I. In the way that you talk to fighters and the way that you cover the sport. I think the beauty, and I'm somebody who's covered. See, I was hesitant when I first asked you because I was like, damn, St. Louis, I'm a Chicago person. She's probably going to say no because St. Louis people hate Chicago.
Really?
Hopefully. Yeah. If you're a baseball fan, it's a huge.
The Cubs. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a Cubs fan though. So I was like, maybe I can throw that out there.
We'll let it slide. Yeah. I mean, I'm a Cardinals fan, obviously, but I'm not I don't know. I used to be all invested, but now I'm an MMA person. So I'm
that's how
I don't need sports.
That's what, so for me, I started off in sports radio, And like at 22, I was like working as a producer in Chicago sports radio. And I was like, wow, like the dream is made. And then as sports radio goes, like it's up and down. And unless you're 40s or 50-year-old man talking about back in my day,
Yeah.
sports radio wasn't really like the hit. And then I moved to Philly and I was promised a job out there. And it's also why I hate the city of Philadelphia. And that didn't come to fruition. And then like I was literally packing up my stuff to move back to Chicago. And I had FS2 on when their UFC was still on FS2. And they were replaying McGregor's Seaver when he jumped the cage and got in all those
Oh my
fights.
gosh.
So here I am thinking that's like a live fight, right? Because I'm stupid. So I'm watching. I go, yo, I don't know who this guy is, but I'm all in because I still watch the NFL. I still watch the NBA, and it's like the loud, crazy guys. Like those are the guys I like. And I'm like, I'm in. I'm like, I don't know who that guy. So I start texting all my friends. My friends like, yeah, idiot. That guy fights this weekend. And I'm like, all right, I'm delaying my move. I got to watch this guy fight. And literally, so that was 194. That was McGregor Mendez. I haven't missed an event since. And I include fight nights. Like, I'm the guy, I love to go will So I'm the guy who will go out on a Saturday, like recently. Oh, UFC Singapore at 4 a.m. I'll get home at 3. I'll make sure I'm okay. I'll make some food, and then we'll just cruise right through the morning. So I've had to pull back a little bit on that because it's kind of hard, waking up at 4 a.m. Thankfully.
Yeah, I woke up at 3 for that too.
Yeah. Thankfully, and I say this like.
And then I took a nap afterwards because I was
I had
exhausted.
To go to work. I had to go to work. Thankfully, I feel like COVID for a while, obviously there was not that many events worldwide. So the time zones are pretty straight. Now we're getting out of that. So who knows how the sleep schedule is going to be affected next year. But yeah, I think we similarly got into the sport the same way. And watching your stuff, like I just love the way you approach fighters. I love the way you talk about it. I love the way you approach the sport. I was actually,
thank you.
I'm going to embarrass myself. I was a little starstruck because I saw your stuff on Instagram. Then Threads came out and I was like, wait, she follows me here and Instagram? I was like, but I love her work. And then that's when we started communicating. That's when I asked you to come on the pod. I'm so bad at Instagram that like.
So am I.
I could never get a Misfits fight. I'll just throw that out there. I could never get it. My social influence is 0. But I use this platform for mainly fighters, coaches, just people in the space, to tell their story, tell their avenue, because it's not really about me. I've worked with the likes of Luke Thomas, and I've always said on this podcast, if he actually watched my podcast, he'd be like, stop saying my name. But I've always mentioned how like there's only one Luke Thomas who can technically break down a fight in a way that none of us will ever understand.
Oh my God, I know. It's so high level.
Yeah, it's beyond high level. Imagine working for that guy.
Yeah.
So
he's just really, really smart in general.
Yeah. Very intelligent. So like I'm a guy Sunday through Friday. I'll talk about the sport. I'll do interviews. I'll do whatever. But Saturday, it's like I don't even work in this space. I put the fan hat on. I go out. Like the place I go to watch all my fights, they literally have tabbed my name, UFC Mike. I wish they knew the sport so they could just say MMA Mike, but they just say Mike.
That's fine.
But you're also not watching Bellator at a bar, right? So
that's true.
But no, I really, really enjoy your perspective of fight because for me, I've been to a few events. I've had countless fighters and coaches on, as you have as well. But it's just all about like the story for me. And I think that's where
and I think what really changed it for me as far as like being a better, I call it just being a better fan.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's a lot of fans out there that, not that they're bad, but it's just like they're uneducated. And the way that they talk about fighters or view fighters is a little bit distorted because they don't know the ins and outs of it. They don't know what goes on behind the scenes. So that's what I like to kind of unravel and get people to understand more. And what really changed that for me was when I started training at an MMA gym and started interacting with fighters. That's when it started to kind of take things to a whole nother level, which that is just something that I've always wanted to do, was like train for real. Like I don't want to go to freaking whatever kickboxing gym. There's like
I love
5,000 of them
kickboxing
now.
24/7.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, no, I want to know how to fight people. I'm like, I don't want to sit here and do freaking, circuit training. So that's literally what it is. It's like do
Yeah, it
5
literally is.
burpees and then do a roundhouse kick, and I'm like, what is this? So, and it's great exercise. It's great for burning calories, but I'm like, I don't care about the calories. I'm like, I actually want to learn a skill. Like that is what I'm trying to do. So, and I'm getting back into training this week, thank God. I finally, I'm like, okay, Bre, we're committing, we're going back, we're not letting our routine go this time, because like whenever I was boxing before, that was like right before I opened my insurance agency, or not right before, but like while I was training. Like I was training pretty regularly. I was going like 4 days a week training boxing, and I was sparring every week. So it was like I was actually taking it seriously. And then I opened my insurance agency, and it was like a 3-month period too of like just starting it up and like getting everything ready. And then I just completely, like, as soon as I opened it, I completely like let go of my routine. And then it got to the point where I was like, oh my God, I haven't trained in like a year. And I was like, what is happening? So now I'm finally getting back into it. And I had some other stuff going on too. Like I have some health issues that I've been dealing with, and I have, a couple injuries that I was dealing with. So it's like, yeah, there was more to it than that. But ultimately I blame myself, because I'm like, yeah, I gave up on something that was really good. It was fun for me and it was really good for me. I think it really strengthened my mind too, like training. And I do think it makes you a better fan when you kind of go through that process a little bit. Not necessarily that you have to be a fighter, that you have to train like a fighter, but even just training and seeing what the fighters actually go through, like, when they're cutting weight or when they're dieting and all that kind of stuff, then you're like, oh wow, there's a lot that goes into this. And then you kind of have a better appreciation for it, I think. And then even if a fighter loses, you're not like, oh, you suck, like
yeah. So I've always taken like the personal route. Some people will call it arrogant. I won't. Luckily for you, by the way, props to you, right? So you just got into training because you like loved it. You want to learn more about it. I got into training because I had Dean Thomas on when I was doing a radio show before the podcast. I had Dean Thomas on the radio show, and we were talking about, I think he was talking about street fights. And then I had told him, I'm like, wow, where were you last weekend? And he's like, what happened last weekend? I'm like, I'll tell you off air. He's like, no, you should tell me now. So I had to tell the world about how I got sucker punched at a bar for doing absolutely nothing, by the way. And then he was like, well, why don't you come down to Florida? And that was like my welcome to MMA moment. Like I got to go down to American Top Team when he was still there. Yeah. I was like, can more people sucker punch me so I can go to more like MMA gyms? Like, how can this, it wasn't a good experience, but it was like, but humbling on both ends, because, and I used to have him on the show before his career kind of stalled out, but it was for the Kevin Lee Tony Ferguson fight, and I was like big on Kevin Lee, and you can imagine like sometimes I'm the guy who takes it a little too far, like Mayweather McGregor. Bre, did you know that a white robe is not the same as a Gucci mink white robe that Conor wore to the Mayweather press conference? I wore a white robe to like go out and watch the fights. People are like, what are you doing? I'm like, aren't we the same? Me and him? So I had like Kevin Lee attire on, so I can understand getting sucker punched that day. But for me, when it comes to like talking, like being in a public setting, I don't know how you feel, but being in a public setting for me, when I'm watching fights, or I'll tell a better story. Recently, I was at Dick's Sporting Goods buying shoes, and I had Bellator stuff on. And the guy was like, oh, did you see the UFC fight last night or whatever it was? And I'm like, yeah, O'Malley Sterling. By the way, I'm just going to throw it out there. Props to Sean, but I do believe it was somewhat of an early stoppage. I think Aljo was moving. It wasn't going to last much longer. It was not going to last much longer.
Salty.
No, not salty at all. Not salty at all.
I'm just joking.
But I mean, but if you look at Speedbach this past weekend.
It could have gone on longer with it being a title fight, I think. Yes, but at the same time, it's like, well, there is a rematch. It might not be an immediate rematch, but there is a rematch that will happen, I believe. And I want, and I want Aljo to be healthy. So I'm glad he didn't take additional damage, even though, yes, it was a little bit early for a title fight, I thought. I am glad though that he didn't take more damage. So that's the way I'm looking at it. Because I picked Sean to win, but I was actually a little surprised. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was gonna be a harder fight for him.
Yeah,
I don't
same.
know.
I mean, props to Sean. He did incredible there. For me, it
Yeah.
was. I mean, I looked at the.
I just had a feeling he was gonna win. I'm like, yeah, I get it. Aljo is like way better on paper. Like, I get it. But I'm like, I
Right.
don't know. I just feel like because I have thought that with Sean before. Like I've people have been like, oh, who's gonna win? Sean O'Malley or this guy? And I'm like, oh, Sean. Like I usually always pick Sean. And I just don't even know why. I just do. And I'm like, yeah, I think he's gonna win, dude. I don't know why. He's just gonna win. That's just what he does. And I think the only time I was wrong was the Cheeto fight. And then I was like, oh, dang it. But
Yeah, there was a time where I think we're at that time, I should say, where you're like, all right, maybe on paper his opponent is better. And now, like, especially after the Aljo fight, I'm like, he's literally that good. And it's
yeah.
very, very similar. And I know people hate this, but it's very similar to how Connor's rise was. You're like, just wait till he gets to that kind of fighter. And then he got to that fighter and then he ran through that fighter. So props to Sean. But anyways, the guy goes, I saw a little bit of an early stoppage. He goes, oh, you're crazy, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I'm like, okay, man. And I'm trying to like not get into this conversation because there's like a 19-year-old kid, right? He's like, I would say, and I'm like, this is so great. I know where this is going. He's like, I would say my favorite fighter is Paddy Pimblett. And I'm like, all right. I was like, there's another guy who lost his last fight. And he's like, I think he won. And I'm like, oh my God, he doesn't get it. And I'm like, all right,
I have conversations like that all the time. And I'm like,
and I feel these are the worst. So here's the best part. So he goes, well, who's your favorite fighter? I go, man, respectfully, I don't have like a favorite.
yeah.
But if there's one that I love to watch, it's Israel Adesanya. He goes, oh, there it is. You're such a bandwagon fan. And I go, you just talked to me about Sean O'Malley and Paddy Pimblett, and I'm the bandwagon fan. I had to literally walk out of there, and I was like, can I just have my stuff? Can I just have my brand new shoes and my shorts? Can I just please get out of here? Because I'm going to lose my shit. And it's just, that's why I respect people like yourself so much who understand this sport, right? And I want to like,
and I still feel like I have so much more to learn too. Like, and that's why I really am excited to get back into training. Because I really want to not only train to obviously like develop my skills with like, you know, boxing and wrestling and jiu-jitsu and all that stuff, but I also just want to use that to learn more about the sport and get better at like breaking down fights and like commentating. Because I feel like when you understand what's happening, like especially because I haven't really trained, I've taken like one jiu-jitsu class, so that's something I want to start. I'm probably not going to start that right away, but once I kind of get going with boxing again, then kind of start doing jiu-jitsu and wrestling and stuff. And I'm really excited about that because then it's like my level of knowledge with just the grappling exchanges are going to be so much better, and just understanding what's going on. I feel like it just really helps so much. And I feel like that's one thing that I do understand better with like the striking exchanges because I've, you know, sparred before. So I know kind of like what it feels like. It's not MMA though, so it's a little bit different, but we kind of were taught more of an MMA style of boxing though. So it was because most of the people in our class were MMA fighters. So if you teach them to do a bunch of shoulder rolls and stuff, it's like, yeah, it's not really going to apply to, although Sean Strickland has done a good job of applying that, that Philly shell style of boxing to MMA. Like, I don't know. And that's one thing that is kind of interesting about this fight is like, he's such a different style than anybody that Adesanya's ever fought. I don't think, I mean, I think it's very unlikely that he's going to win, but it does kind of, the thing is that he's never fought Adesanya. So that's the exciting part about it. Cause everybody else pretty much has besides Dreykus.
That's right. It's actually the most exciting part about it. Before we jump into the fight, I want to start with what I said to begin this podcast, that we might be in the middle of the worst combat sports promotion of all time. Listen, I understand you got to talk to sell tickets. I understand you got to talk to sell pay-per-views. I mean, I just watched Countdown yesterday, and it was less than 500,000 on the UFC YouTube. Most of Izzy on a fight week is over 1 million, 1.4 Conor-esque numbers, if you will, when he's fighting. Now, here's the thing, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you think, whether it was Dana White or Hunter or somebody in the UFC, they go, hey, Sean, here's the biggest fight of your life. Scale it back by 1,000 when you're in front of a camera.
Yeah, well, he tweeted something saying that they like deleted his I guess footage of him talking. So I just saw that literally like less than an hour ago. So
God. So yes, the answer is yes, they did.
Yeah. And that could be Sean just being Sean and just joking around, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did have to delete stuff that he said. I mean, did you see the episode of Joe Rogan with him on? I mean, some of the stuff he said, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, and I think that was like one of the very few times I've seen Rogan like, dude, what are we talking about right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, all the 2,000 plus guests Joe Rogan has had on.
Yeah, Rogan's had like... Alex Jones on. He's had Joey Diaz. Yeah, like, but Sean Strickland is like where he reached his limit. He's like, I mean,
he really sometimes looked a little uncomfortable talking to Sean, and he was like, no, we don't have to really talk about that. And then he's like, Sean's like, yeah, dude, yeah. And then Joe's like, no, wait, like, so I don't know if you combine that with a fight that's happening in a month from now. Dylan Dennis and Logan Paul.
Yeah, they've done a great job promoting that fight.
As you and I have found ways to really like embrace and love and get into this sport, I don't know how you feel, and that's why I'm asking you. I'm almost embarrassed. We haven't seen too much yet, but from Izzy and Sean, I'm sure this press conference is going to be terrible in my opinion. But yeah, between Logan and Dylan, and Izzy and Sean, because Izzy doesn't back down. So this is going to be, I mean, we've already seen their first interaction.
Wasn't there like some YouTuber that said they were going to do host something with Sean and Izzy on? Like a live stream?
Possibly. Was it Aiden?
I wonder if they did that, because that actually might help, because then you're going to get like the younger people that are watching YouTube and stuff. But as far as like, yeah, I mean, there's probably a lot of people that don't even realize this fight's happening this weekend, to be honest.
Yeah, and I get like you probably got to turn up the craziness a little bit to get people interested in this fight. Like you said, Sean never fighting Izzy before. But I just think like the UFC has already set themselves up for really terrible press.
Yeah.
They're not going to have many clips that they can show. I mean, it may be one of those commercials that you'll see during fight week where it's just Izzy, or it's just a highlight of both of them with like Eminem over it. And it's just like you can't run in like a 2-minute promo. Every pay-per-view, we look forward to the next pay-per-view's promo. Mm-hmm. No one looked forward to the 293 promo because there's nothing that you can really sell. It's just, hey, here's a guy who's never fought Izzy before. Oh, and by the way, we got to censor half of him. And then if you look at Logan and Dylan, like, I've finally reached the point, and I've never said this about anyone ever, but I finally reached the point where I simply want to watch a fight to see the outcome of somebody getting hurt. Like, it's just bad. Like, you being a woman in this sport, I just feel like you could definitely address this better than I can.
I think that might be the nice thing about having more female voices in the sport now. Yeah. Is yeah. I guess like we can say things in a way that makes it sound a little bit more graceful. I don't know.
No, it's well, yeah, and I want to ask you about someone that's going to be at UFC 293. I'm sure you know where I'm going with that. But there's a way to promote a fight, and as much as I can't stand Jake Paul, like Dylan Dan is bringing in Logan's fiance, and the consistent memes and everything that's going on, like that.
Yeah, I've hardly seen anything with Izzy and Sean besides like the stuff he already said on Rogan. Like that's been shared, like reshared, but like that's all stuff from like a while ago before they even knew they were fighting.
Yeah, they had a press conference that they were both at, I think a year ago, when Izzy was fighting Cannonier. and Sean called him out for having frosted tips and being a TikTok guy and all that. So I'm sure a lot of that's going to
Yeah.
get rehashed, but like, I just feel like this is like the worst time because you can't sell a pay-per-view. Here's where I think you can't sell a pay-per-view between Izzy and Sean knowing their two personalities.
Yeah.
People aren't just buying tickets based off their credentials. Maybe they're buying the pay-per-view because of Izzy, but most of the time, these marquee fights, you're buying for both. Aljo and O'Malley, you bought for both. And
Yeah.
there was trash talk included. I don't think
I
UFC
feel like that was also like not as big of a talent gap as Sean and
for
Izzy.
sure. And that's another thing.
Yeah.
But to your point on that, you mentioned, and I've also said like how this is the first time Izzy's fought Sean.
Yeah.
That to me is the exciting part. Like
Yes.
I think we're both in agreement how the fight will go or how it should go.
Yeah.
But like once you get to that point of whether you've been a long reigning champ like Izzy or you're fighting a top guy like Sean Strickland, like you just don't know. Like that's the beauty of it. You simply just don't know. You know how it should go, but that's the beauty of the sport. You just don't.
100%. That's why I always tell people, I'm like, they'll be like, oh, what should I bet on, this weekend? And I don't gamble, so I don't even, I'm like, dude, just know I'm not putting any money on this. But I'm like, if I was, this is what I would do. And I'll be like, but just know this is MMA. Anything can happen. So literally, like, this could be wrong easily.
You got judges, you got injuries.
Yeah, there's so much. Like, did they have a bad weight cut? Like, there's so, and also just like mentally too. Like, this is like when it gets to this level of competition, there's a lot of mental that goes into it. And I think people kind of forget that. And I think that is probably the biggest edge that Izzy has on Sean, other than obviously he's one of the best kickboxers we've ever seen. But I think that mental edge too is what, kind of we saw it in the Kelvin Gastelum fight. He's like, I'm ready to die. Like he's like, it's like, that's terrifying. And I don't know if Sean necessarily has that, that Izzy has to that extent. Now, what I do like about Sean is that, he's kind of crazy. Like he's a wild boy.
Kind of crazy. Yeah. I feel Sean's a lot of crazy.
Yeah.
I've already seen a couple interviews this week. I actually saw one this morning with Mike Bond of MMA Junkie, where he was like, "Is he spineless? Maybe we'll teach him how to be a man this week." Blah blah, and then everyone's like, "Yeah,
man dance."
Yeah, and he's like, "Well, you've been working on your wrestling, right?" He's like, "Yeah, I don't know. I'll probably just go in there and box with him, though." And it's like, all right, Sean. And like I love Extreme Couture. I love Coach Eric Nixick. I know Eric Nixick is putting him in the best possible positions to go in there, compete, and possibly win this fight. But it's like at some point you can't completely manage the fighter, right? So if Sean takes a punch, he's like, all right, let's go. And he's like in a bar brawl, then it's like, all right, I guess. And I'm sorry, I don't know why Sean has a Joey Diaz voice in my voice, but that's just how I hear Sean Strickland.
Oh, he does. Yeah, that's kind of what he sounds like. I mean, he's just crazy, but I do think that is what I like about him. And he's just kind of himself, like whether you like it or not. It's like, well, at least he's, being himself. He's not putting on a whole act. Because I think that is how he really is. Which is kind of scary, but yeah, like, and then but the thing about it is, I think with as far as like their styles matching up, I really do think this is probably the worst fight in the division for Sean. It almost makes me wish that he didn't get the title shot this soon, and maybe that, I don't know that he would ever have a chance at winning the belt, but I feel like he would have a better chance if there was somebody else that was champion. I don't know.
How about a guy who was filling in as replacement, Jared Cannonier? I would have liked to see Sean Cannonier. Like, if Izzy did this, that'd be a fun fight.
Have they fought before, him and Cannonier?
They might have. I might not know what I'm talking about.
I don't remember. I know. No, they might not have actually, because I don't remember them fighting. That would be a great fight.
Yeah.
I would actually really love that fight.
Split
they
decision
did?
Lost.
I don't remember
Jared
that.
won by split decision. Yeah, me either. Uh, that's how often Sean Strickland fights. It was only
Yeah.
it was literally 3 fights ago. He lost to Pereira, Cannonier, and then he went and beat Imavov and Abus.
Yeah.
So also not coming off the best wins for a title shot. We get it.
That's the thing.
The
Abus is
the
like he's not
Drakus
even
thing
ranked.
happened. Yeah, the Drakus thing happened, and then he got hurt. And I'm gonna be
Yeah.
honest. I honestly think, at least for 2023, like Izzy, thank you. You fought a couple times. You gave us the highlight. Like if you're the UFC, right? Hey man, we'll put this Drakus talk until next year. Like, because their first exchange was very heated, and I understand what is. I'm not vouching it for it, and I'm not saying he was in the right, but I understand what Izzy was doing there, trying to bait someone in and be like, I got you type thing.
Yeah.
Good on Drakus for not falling for it, but it
Yeah.
just didn't. It wasn't set up to be good promotion between them two. And now maybe Izzy will come with a machine gun of arsenal of trash talk if they ever do meet. But maybe Sean's a warm up for the trash talk between the two of them.
Yeah.
Because Izzy, it felt like Izzy was going to take Drakus way more personal than he's going to take the Sean Strickland fight. And maybe that's to something you said, maybe that's a compliment to the short gap of talent. If you think Drakus is that talented, and maybe Izzy recognizes that, so he's trying to deepen the mental warfare. But before we break down the card, I do want to get your thoughts on what we're seeing in the boxing world between Logan Paul and Dylan Dennis. And like you've got to have a few. I know you posted something on your channel about it, but like you've got to have some thoughts you can share with me, because I'm at the point now where it's like I don't care about KSI. I take that back. Shameless plug, and this is your first time, so I'm embarrassing myself a little bit by just being so open. Kelly Murphy's used to this kind of word vomit from me. I've been watching Keeping Up with the Furies or At Home with the Furies. Yeah, At Home with the Furies on Netflix. Absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. I'm not a gypsy king, but I love the gypsy lifestyle. It's great. I don't think I could have 6 kids, but if anyone hasn't watched that show, it is absolutely phenomenal. So I actually am a little interested in KSI and Tommy Fury, but as good. And here's the worst part: you being into combat sports, you'll understand what I'm saying. Boxing has had such a good year, and towards the end of the year, we're gonna get this sideshow. And
I know, and I wish I would follow boxing more. I need to. There's so much to follow. It's just
there is so much
oh my
to
God.
follow.
And I've been kind of focusing more on like trying to follow like more like regional MMA and also just like the smaller MMA, like PFL and stuff like that. Like I'm trying to focus on MMA. So I'm like, I'd rather not pay attention to boxing and kind of have more of a grip on MMA overall and not just UFC. Because it is getting to the point now where there are eyeballs on other promotions, whereas before it used to be pretty much just UFC. Like nobody even knew about other promotions, like the average fan. And now a lot of fans do know about PFL and they do know about these other promotions. But yeah, boxing, it has been a great year for boxing. And I don't know when this YouTuber stuff first came out, like I was like, this is so dumb. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is a disgrace to the sport. And I just thought it was so, like, I was so against it, like Jake Paul and all that stuff. And now I do see the benefit. And I think it's just from like having conversations with people about it that are not involved in the sport like I am, like just regular fans. They do get more excited about these fights. It's insane to me because I'm like, dude, we literally just had Sean O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling, and people are cared more about Nate Diaz versus Jake Paul. And it's like, the thing is like the average fan doesn't know, but Nate Diaz isn't a boxer. Okay. He is not a boxer.
Well, he boxed Connor. He boxed up Connor in the cage.
His style of boxing works really well in MMA. Like
right,
what he does. But for boxing, it's like, no. But he still survived. He didn't get cut for the first time in like 10 years. He didn't get cut in that fight, which is kind of impressive, actually. And he survived.
The biggest puncher in the world.
Yeah, he did better than most people probably thought he was going to do. And which is insane that people thought that Jake Paul was just going to run through Nate Diaz. I'm like, what is wrong with you people? But
he almost got the tap.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, there's a man I want to shout out very quickly. I'll let you get back. There's a man, Ross Bain Art. He's very popular in the MMA circle. He has amazing art pieces. He has a piece of Nate pulling the guillotine on Jake.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm ordering it, and it's coming front and center because it is one of the greatest moments
that's amazing. That was so funny. I loved that. I was like, yes, thank you. Yeah, because like if they ever fight in MMA, I mean, Jake's done. Like he's
very quickly.
R.I.P. Yeah. So.
But that's the sad part about this Logan and Dylan thing, right? Because for all intents and purposes, like Dylan is a world-class jiu-jitsu player.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But you're just losing everything you've worked for by doing this. And like, it's not even,
do you think he's going to show up?
I have gotten.
I don't even know. I don't know anymore.
I don't know. And here's the thing. I've gotten so invested. I am so into the true artistry of combat sports, right? And I respect every single person who steps inside the ring, cage, whatever it may be, the thriller triangle that we once had. No matter what it is, I respect everyone. Even if I'm not going for them or I'll never talk to them or I don't like them as a person, I respect everyone who competes inside combat sports.
Yep.
But I have also put so much time and energy like yourself into regional MMA, UFC, Bellator, PFL, and all these other things that I'm disgusted with myself by how much I've invested my time over the last 2-3 weeks into Logan Paul and Dylan Dennis. 2:00 in the morning, I'm watching the latest YouTube on it. I'm on Twitter. I'm going through this. I'm looking up Nina's dating history. Why? I don't know. I'm trying to find out Dylan's dating history. I'm listening to the bouncer who choked out Dylan in New Jersey go on a podcast. Like, I am listening to far too many things about a fight that literally means zero to both of their careers. Because for Logan Paul...
Yeah, isn't it an exhibition fight?
I believe so. But for Logan Paul, you exhibition Floyd, okay, he carried you. Let's just say what it is. He carried him. And then for Dylan, you haven't fought in 4+ years. And your return to combat sports is boxing a guy who's a WWE star. Like, and I think that's the one thing we're not giving Logan enough credit for. I don't watch WWE like I did growing up as a kid. But like every once in a while, if Logan's on a pay-per-view, I'm going to tune in because he's going to do some crazy shit. Yeah. But this is where we get the lines blurred between what social media and social influencing boxers are getting into boxing. This is where those lines get blurred because some of these social media influencers, like one who I'm good friends with, Ben DeBane Davis, who actually does work in combat sports, he's going to be on the next Misfits card at the end of September, right? He's someone who I know is taking this shit seriously. But then to see like Dylan and Logan doing this, like boxing matters to Ben. Continuing to grow in the sport matters to Ben. These are just two guys with a lot of clout and a lot of following who can easily troll each other, and they're going to get nothing out of it. So it hurts boxing, and it hurts the social influence of what these guys are trying to do. Now it's entertaining, and I can tell you who I want to win and what I would love to see happen, but it wouldn't have maybe been that way if they went about it differently. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. It is a little strange to me that this fight is being hyped. Like, once I found out it was an exhibition fight, I was like, okay, what is going on here? Because, like, I've just never seen a fight hyped up so much and so much bad blood that doesn't even count as an actual fight. So it's like, what are we doing? Like, is this... It just seems a little reality TV to me.
Yes.
Because it's not, why not make it a real fight? You know, why not? What is the reason? Why?
Well, and then
I
they're
don't
arguing
know.
about rounds, and it's like, listen,
Does it have to do with how far apart are they in weight? They're not that far apart because Dylan fought
no,
at like welterweight, I think.
yeah, and they're gonna fight at 195 according to Dylan,
Right.
and there's no rehydration clause or anything like that. So it's just frustrating. Like great point, right? You talked about like reality TV. We got that in the main event. We got Tommy Fury, right? We got the guy off of Love Island. Like let's let him have that.
Yeah.
And I think the worst part of it all is then you see the back and forth between Logan and Jake, and that's really disgusting because it's like they're two brothers and they both occupy the same space. And I get it, brothers fight. I don't have any siblings, but like, and I can't
Do you
believe
think he's kind of doing that to maybe try to get a Floyd fight for Jake? But that still, like,
no,
I don't know,
I
because he
think
was like talking trash about like, oh, I fought Floyd, you didn't fight Floyd, but it's like, oh, you fought him in an exhibition. At
yeah,
least Jake's fights are actually real, you
yeah,
know?
I think that's what it comes down to. I think right
Because
now this is inspired.
technically, Logan Paul hasn't won a boxing fight, technically.
Right, right. He's according
So
to Jake, he's 0-1. According to Jake, and
yeah,
I
I
mean
don't
he
know.
is, right?
When I first saw them talking about that, I was like, oh, maybe they're trying to, get a Floyd fight for Jake. Because Jake's like, oh, I'm a better boxer. And it's like, oh, well, I fought Floyd and blah blah blah. And but then because I'm like, well, I don't think they're gonna fight each other. Like, I don't think that's I don't know, maybe
No,
they do.
I
I
don't
mean,
think
they're
that'll
pretty
happen.
crazy.
They are pretty crazy. I don't think that will ever happen, but I do think it's out of spite. I think right now where we're at, I do
Yeah.
think Logan is doing this out of spite of Jake because, but I don't understand why they can't just like accept what they both are. Jake's the better boxer and he's pulling
Yeah.
in better fights and better numbers in the boxing world. And Logan works for WWE and he's one of the most entertaining wrestlers. Like it's okay to
He's
go
also,
your own avenue.
doing a lot of like stuff with business too. Like he's
Right.
doing other things. So I don't know why he feels the need to like be a better boxer than Jake. It's like, well, you're doing other things better than
Right.
he is. So but the thing about Jake, and this was like I guess the biggest criticism of him and still is like, oh, you've only fought basically old MMA fighters that have no striking. But I was kind of thinking about it and I'm like, well, what do they normally do with a boxer in the beginning of their career? They're not fighting superstars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
how is it any different? It's actually probably more difficult than what a lot of boxers I don't know, maybe not more difficult, but just more fight experience his opponents than what you typically would get if you're coming up as a boxer. So I think that is one thing that is a little, I guess, unfair to Jake. Is saying like, oh, you haven't fought real boxers. It's like, well, what kind of level of talent would he be fighting if he was just starting out as a regular boxer? Probably
it'd be the same. It'd be similar in the boxing space.
Yeah.
I mean, he started off doing what boxers did, right? He fought a midget
He's
NBA
building
player,
up his
Nate
record
Robinson.
just like every other
Right.
boxer does.
Yeah, he fought Nate Robinson, knocked and then everyone's like, "Wow, look at Jake Paul! He knocked out Nate Robinson." It's like, yeah, that's really not that hard. Did you see the size difference?
Yeah.
And then he fought Ben Askren, who was like Ben Askren's like boxing defense was like this. Here,
And he
just
was
break the
like
guard,
about to get 2 hip replacements. Yeah.
Yeah. I've given Jake credit ever since both Woodley fights, and then obviously the boxing world goes, "Oh, look what happens when he fought an actual boxer with fights on his record in Tommy Fury." But then obviously he fought Anderson Silva, knocked Anderson Silva down. Even at that age, that's quite an accomplishment. Go the distance with Nate. Like, yes, he's fought but the crazy part about where we're at now is like, where do we go with Jake? Like, who's there? Like,
yeah, I don't know.
There's not many people there. Like, there's not.
Yeah, there's a lot of conspiracy theories too, I feel like, about if his fights are fixed and whatnot.
Yeah,
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I cannot buy into I'm not going to mention any promotions names, but I cannot buy into any American-based combat sport event, even though sometimes boxing's held, overseas. That's mainly for money grabbing. I can't buy into any marquee American combat sports event being fixed. I just can't do that. I know that there may be other promotions where, people are told to go the other way or take the fall or whatever the case may be. But that's neither here or there. I just think it's so disrespectful to everyone involved as a fan to say, "Oh, that fight was fixed."
Yeah,
like you just can't do that, in my opinion. But
people have said that in the UFC too.
Yeah,
like they said that when Cowboy lost to Conor. I'm like, are you guys not paying attention? Like,
let me kick you in the head. Let me kick you in the head, and then do the shoulder bumps right into your nose, directly on your nose. You know what I love too? It's like in the immediate aftermath, right? It's always immediate. And again, I know you said you watch them at home. I watch them out, so I'm surrounded by 100 plus people, 200 people. Immediately, a crazy fight will happen, and people are like, that was fixed. That's crazy. There's no way. And you're like, then they watch the replay, and they're like, oh, wow, that actually happened. Yeah, it actually happened. And I don't know. It's one of those crazy things that this sport is about. Another thing this sport is crazy about is with UFC 293. Bre, I'm going to ask you a very non-fight, straight-up question. How do you feel, not only as someone who covers the sport, but as a woman who covers the sport, how do you feel about shoeys?
I'm going to say that's a hard pass for me. Yeah,
I feel
no, thank you. I'm good on that.
I'm not going to confirm or deny. There's plenty of evidence.
I'm okay with other people. Just like, this is basically my philosophy in life. If it doesn't affect me, you can do it. It's fine. Just don't make me do it, and we're good.
I think we are going to get the shoeys of all shoeys this weekend. UFC 293 goes down in Sydney, Australia. Let's talk about this card a little bit. So we have Israel Adesanya, Sean Strickland in the main event. We talked about that ad nauseum. Tai Tuivasa, Alexander Volkov. Very interesting fight in the heavyweight division, because when Tai's gotten to the top of the mountain, he's been knocked down.
Yep.
And now he's back in Australia. And they both believe this fight gets them right back there. Here's the problem. You got Tom Aspinall. You got Ciryl Gane. You got Sergey, right? No.
Yeah, we finally have like some good contenders at heavyweight. Like quite a few of them.
Yeah, finally. And then so now there's guys like Tai, no disrespect to Tai or Volkov, but these guys are like the second go around or third go around when we're looking for the next contender. What's crazy to me about where the heavyweight division is, Curtis Blaydes has dominated the heavyweight division for the last few years. He's been taken back by Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou, and that's it.
Yeah.
He can't even sniff a title opportunity right now. They gave him Jalton Almeida. They're like, here you go. Come take our next up-and-comer.
Yeah.
It's so crazy to me.
That's a tough matchup.
Where do you think this fight puts the winner?
That's a great question. The one thing about Volkov is that he did have a much closer fight with Gane than Tuivasa did. So that is one thing that I kind of think about with him. And depending on what, I guess it's such a mess right now. So it's like, Jones and Stipe are fighting for the title. Obviously, Jones right now holds the title. And then I assume they're both going to retire after that fight. I don't really see Stipe.
So?
Yeah, I definitely don't think Stipe is going to keep fighting. I don't even know if he's going to, when's this fight supposed to happen? Is it December? November? Yeah, who knows? I mean, a lot can happen between now and November. So we'll see if this fight even happens.
A lot. We gotta make sure John gets there
but
first.
It's like, yeah. But I mean, I think more than likely we will see this fight happen. I think that Jones really has nothing left to do in MMA. I mean, seriously, like, what else does he need to do? Nothing. He's made a lot of money. He's beat a lot of fighters. He's won both belts. Yeah, what to fight Sergey Pavlovich? No, like I'm sorry, but I don't think that Jones is going to be enticed to stay. Yeah, no. So I think the only fight that he really wanted was Francis. Um, that was what he wanted. So it's like now he can't even have that. So I don't know how motivated he's gonna be to really keep going after he fights Stipe, because I'm assuming he's gonna beat Stipe. And then I think that yeah, so the title will probably be vacated, I think. I would imagine. And then who fights for either an interim title or a vacant title?
I say Pavlovich and Aspinall.
I could see that. I could see that. I could
It's
see
probably the
them.
best
I
fight they
could
can make
see
in
them
heavyweight right now.
doing. I could see them doing Pavlovich and Gon. I could see them doing that too. I don't know.
I could, but how many opportunities are we just going to keep giving Gon right now?
I know.
That's I think Dane his track record is like, yo, like we gave you
Yeah.
that you won the interim belt, you didn't win that, you lost
Yeah.
against John, like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know either. I mean, he doesn't have to worry about Francis anymore. And then if Jones retires, then it's like, well, now he does have a chance. So that would be the only, I guess, reason that I would think that they might give Cyril another chance. And just because his most recent performance was really good. But at the same time, I don't know. I do think that if Cyril were to get another title shot, that I do think he would need to beat somebody like Pavlovich or Aspinall first.
I agree.
I think I would more likely see them giving, yeah, Pavlovich and Aspinall like an interim or a vacant title shot.
So that's where I think we're like 2 fights away for the winner, or 3 fights away even for the winner of Tai and Volkov. And it's such an interesting fight, in my
It
opinion,
is.
especially at heavyweight, right? Because
Yeah.
we've seen this similar matchup with Derek Lewis and Volkov, and it's like you got to wonder the matchmaking behind it, because Derek Lewis beat Volkov, Tai beat Volkov, and I'm not doing MMA math, but
Yeah.
or excuse me, Derek beat Volkov, Tai beat Derek. So it's like, are they looking to push Tai like back up to the front, because there's just so much. We're finally like this, right? We're finally like, hey, there's movement in the heavyweight division, but there's like no straight path for anybody.
No.
They're like you turn here, turn right here. I don't know.
Somebody's gonna get screwed over for sure. They have to.
Yeah, I think the first person getting
There's no way around it.
Curtis Blades.
Yeah.
Because here's a guy who called for the Stipe fight, wanted God, like just I don't know.
I mean, he's a terrible matchup for most guys in that division. That's why it's so hard for him to get fights. Yeah. Because it's like he's not good enough to be champ, but he's good enough to beat everybody else that isn't the champ. So it's like, what do you do? I don't know.
I also wonder if his style doesn't entice Dana and the matchmakers to get.
That's also part of it, probably. I mean, he has gotten like some good finishes and exciting performances, but like his performance against Volkov was just, oh my God. Yeah, I wanted to fall asleep. But I don't know. I mean, but it's like there are other fighters that like they have really, really exciting fights, and then they have one fight that isn't exciting, and then everybody thinks that they're boring, and it's like, well, no, did you not watch all their other fights? But I would say, yeah, like if Curtis is trying to win the fight and he's taking the safest path to victory, it's not an exciting fight to watch.
Right, and heavyweight, you kind of want that, but also this is what MMA is. Is there a fight on this card at UFC 293 that you're most excited for besides the co and main?
Trying to think. So trying to think who's fighting on this card.
Manel Kate versus Felipe Dos Santos, Justin Tafa's back against Austin Lang, Tyson Pedro. Then you have Carlos Ulberg against Dalian Jung, Jack Jenkins against Chepe Mariscal. That's a very fun fight.
I think that fight or the Tyson Pedro fight, I might be most excited for those two.
Yeah, Jack Jenkins and Chepe is going to be.
That's going to be a big
probably. Yeah, that's probably the fight of the night, in my opinion. But you also mentioned, and I'll give you the floor here, the other event this weekend.
Yeah, Game Bred Bare Knuckle.
Game Bred Bare Knuckle. How fun has that been to cover?
It's really cool. So I had kind of watched a little bit of it before, and I knew about it because I knew Jorge like started this promotion and everything. And I'm a Jorge fan. So I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. It's kind of like street fights, but it's sanctioned. So I'm like, that's pretty freaking sweet. And who better to be in charge of that than Jorge Masvidal? I mean, that is just perfect for him. Like, that is so Jorge Masvidal of a thing to do. So I love it. I think it's really cool. I think I mean, bare knuckle boxing is kind of hot right now, especially with Bryce Hall and Mike Perry being such a huge star. So it really makes things interesting, because then you think of, okay, here's another place that some of these fighters can go if things don't necessarily go their way in the UFC. Or maybe they don't go to the UFC. Maybe they go straight to bare knuckle. I don't know. I think there will be some of that too. Like, there will be fighters that like they start their MMA career in bare knuckle MMA, which is crazy to think about. But then there's also, I think, going to be a lot of UFC vets, and there already are. Like, obviously Junior Dos Santos and Verdum, like two of the best heavyweights of all time, fighting, and that's huge for the organization. Like, that is so huge, having two just like legends of MMA in the main event. I think that's the biggest thing that is really kind of creating that draw. It's just seeing these fighters on a different stage kind of excites people, because it's like, oh, we don't have all the same, it's just different than the UFC. It's different. There's not as many rules, I guess. It's a little bit more like a pure form of fighting, I guess you could say. So I think that's what excites me about it. And then, I don't know. It just makes me wonder if there's like other fighters in the UFC that like were really had like a big name, or maybe they were really good, but they just kind of, I don't know, had a losing streak and got cut, and they're still a good fighter, but they just, didn't have the best of luck in the UFC. I mean, you kind of see the same thing with some of these guys in PFL, like Impa Kasanganay. He didn't have the best run in the UFC, but he's, I think, on like a 5, maybe even longer than that, winning streak in PFL. So actually, I think he's on like a 7 fight. I don't know. He hasn't lost in a while, but it's like, yeah. And then you see them able to make a lot of money. I mean, he might even be able to win the $1 million. So it's like, yeah, you're able to see them actually succeed in another organization, make more money, and still kind of hang on to, like, I guess, making a name for themselves. Like, they weren't able to in the UFC, but like Mike Perry now in bare knuckle, like, I don't think he's ever been more famous than he is right now.
No,
it's crazy. Not, no. Yeah, so I think that is really exciting about it.
Yeah, great point there, especially, and also like just thinking about some of these fighters who are now getting into the promotion side. Anthony Pettis FC is like running shit in MMA right now. I mean, Jorge Masvidal puts on the best cards, whether it's Game Bred Boxing, bare knuckle, like this dude, he's just pulling out heavy hitter after heavy hitter after heavy hitter. We're seeing so many great icon fighting. He does great stuff with as well. So there's just so many great fighters giving back to the fight game. Also, two guys that we could possibly throw into that Jake Paul conversation, right? We're like, who's next for Jake? Got Jorge, got Anthony Pettis, who boxed. Also look at a guy like Clay Collard. Like, Clay Collard is a guy
who
put on one of the best fights of the year against Shane Burgos recently.
That was such a good fight.
It's such a good fight. One of my favorite fights of
He's so
2023.
fun to watch. So
His
fun to
boxing is
watch.
just incredible.
It
His
is.
boxing is incredible. I would
Yeah.
love to see him face Jake Paul. I'm just gonna throw that out
Oh
there.
yeah.
It's not the biggest name. It's not the biggest name at all, but it would be
But
competitive.
his style is just so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, if he wins the $1 million, I could see them doing it
Right?
for
Like, why
sure.
wouldn't you do a 1-and-1
Yeah.
boxing and MMA?
And then
Like,
it's like, oh, you don't even have to train, because somebody like that in MMA who actually has really good boxing, then I could see them really run. Like I could see Clay really running with that and like focusing only on boxing. Can you imagine how much better his boxing would be? And it's already so good, but it's like, imagine if he was just focusing on boxing. Oh my God.
he
Yeah, that would be
had that in 2020
insane.
during the COVID year when he was like the upset king. He was doing
Yeah.
boxing because there wasn't MMA going on, and he was facing all these young, highly respected like prospects coming up. He was just beating them all. And boxing's like, who the hell is this guy? Who
Yeah.
is this guy? Where's he coming from? And then, that earns a lot of respect. But I like what you said. That's a very good point. If he wins the $1 million, Jake Paul's got to deal with PFL. Clay
Right.
be PFL champ. Like the storyline is there. I think every time I've had Clay on the podcast, I ask him about it. And he's just like, man, just give me the fight, man. He doesn't care. He just wants to fight.
Yeah. And I mean, and Jake's probably quite a bit bigger than him, but still, I think Clay would beat him, honestly. Just like his skill level is so like, yeah, and he's
watching
so
his
tough
boxing
too.
against Shane Burgos told me everything I needed to know about Clay Collins.
Yes, and Shane Burgos is a good boxer too. That's the thing.
He is.
Like that was such a good. I knew that was going to be a good fight. Just like both of their styles, I'm like, oh, this is just fireworks, guaranteed.
Well, before I get you out of here, do you want to do predictions? Do you do predictions?
I do sometimes. I'm usually wrong whenever I publicly announce them. But...
it's just listen, we're not
no,
going
it's
to be
okay.
like hitting you back up and be like, damn, you got this one wrong, this one wrong. I've only ever
Bre
done
with 33%. You suck.
I've only done that to Kelly Murphy. I've only texted her during fight week and been like, or during fight night and been like, remember when you said this guy was going to win? And she just leaves me on red.
No, I'll do predictions. I'm not scared.
I'll start with the prelim that we both mentioned. We'll go from there. We'll start with Jack Jenkins and Chepe Mariscal.
Okay, originally I was thinking Chepe, but now that I've I rewatched the Jamal Emmers fight, and I rewatched one of Chepe's fights. I can't remember which one it was. I don't know. I didn't think that Jack actually won that fight against Jamal Emmers, so that was kind of why I was like, I don't know. But I do think, especially with this being in Australia and him just having so much hype right now, I don't know. I just feel like he's probably gonna win just for some reason. But I think it's gonna be a really good fight. Like I don't think it's gonna be an easy win for him by any means. Like I think it'll probably go to decision.
If it goes to decision, that's going to be a war, and that's easy.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yes.
I'm take Chepe in that fight. Then we have Carlos Ulberg, 8-1, taking on Da Un Jung. I've got Ulberg in this fight.
I've got Ulberg too in that one. Yeah.
And we'll just get into the main card with Aussie, pretty much all the way through.
I know.
Tyson Pedro against Anton Turjak. I probably butchered that. I know I did for sure.
I know some of those names. I'm like, yikes. I'm taking Tyson in that one.
Well, as we go on, let me just ask you this. Is it going to be a very successful night for the Australian fighters, do you think?
I don't know, because like I don't know about Shane Young, like that fight. I think he might get submitted. He's never been submitted, but I think there's a possibility he could get submitted in that fight, or maybe beat by a decision or something. I don't know. That's like the guy he's fighting, Gabriel Miranda, this Brazilian guy. Yeah. He's pretty good. I don't know. So that's one of the fights where like usually I would be like, oh yeah, Shane Young all the way, but then like I don't know. It's kind of one of them like, I don't know.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
I hope he wins, but yeah, and I don't know. I think it's gonna be. I think, yeah. I don't know. It's gonna be a good night. I think for Izzy and most of the guys there, but like Carlos or Ulberg, I think that's a pretty safe pick.
Justin Tafa, Austin Lane on the main card.
Yeah, I'm taking Toph on that one. I think actually though, when they fought, well, it was kind of a weird fight because it was like literally 30 seconds
Yeah.
that we got to see. And I guess out of those 30 seconds, I would say Austin was getting the better of them, but it's like, dude, it's 30 seconds. Like, we're not going to judge a fight off 30 seconds. Like, no. So I don't know. I think Tafa might win that one. I don't know that it's like a safe bet, but I think I'm gonna lean towards Toph on that one. So I think overall, probably most of the Australian New Zealand fighters will win, but I think there's gonna be some that are gonna go home pretty sad that night. So
Last three, I'm gonna get your prediction on, then I'll get you out of here. Thank you for giving me so much of your time. This has been
of
awesome. I
course.
loved it. You can come on whenever you want. Like this is awesome. Manel Cape against Felipe dos Santos.
I'm taking Manel all day on that one. I do think Felipe is I almost kind of wish they wouldn't give him this as his debut because I do think he has a lot of potential. He's young. He's only 22.
That was
So it's like,
Contender Series, I believe.
yeah, he was supposed to be on Contender Series and his opponent missed weight, I think. And so they offered him this fight, which I don't know, maybe he's getting a good contract out of it. Like Val Woodburn, when he fought Bo Nickel, he got like a good contract out of that. So hopefully that's the same situation. Because that's a really hard debut fight, like for anybody. And I think he's maybe lost once or he's undefeated. I think he might be undefeated. I think Felipe is. And he trains at Shootbox. So like he's got so much potential. I don't know. I'm afraid this might be like too much too soon for him. But at the same time, it's like, well, he could bounce back from this. Like if he loses, like he'll be right back in there and just maybe fight somebody a little closer in competition. Right. But just because Manel Kopp has so much experience and he's fought like some really, really tough guys in that division. Yeah, I don't know. I really like Manel Kopp. He's a really fun fighter to watch.
Yeah.
You know, he's showboats a lot. He's crazy. He moves around. Like he's always switching stances, which that's another thing I kind of worry about with him too, is like he's just so hard to read and tricky, and that could really throw somebody off, especially in their debut. And they got like an adrenaline dump, and you know, this is a whole new experience for them. And he's switching stances and moving like crazy. It's like, oh my God. Yeah, that's a tough fight for your first fight in the UFC. But if he wins, man, then he's the sky's the limit then.
Yeah. Tai Tuivasa, Alexander Volkov.
I don't know. I'm going to go with Tai just because it's in Australia. I don't know. But I think it's not going to be easy. Volkov is, he's got a ton of experience. He's fought like everybody in that division. So I don't know. I think there's a possibility that Tai might just be able to catch him. I think that might be what happens.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it comes down to.
He might just like try to throw some leg kicks and try to maybe not like immobilize Volkov, but kind of at least try to take away some of his power with, you know, chopping away at his legs a little bit, maybe. I don't know what his game plan is, but yeah, I don't know. That's tough though, because Volkov's range is like so crazy and it's gonna be hard for I don't know. I'm still gonna go with Tai just because it's in Australia. I don't know. He's probably just gonna have that energy.
Shooty, right? Like that's
of course
the only. Yeah, that's the. I've been requested by the place that I go to not do one because
that's fair.
I did it last time. I mean, I did it last time. I've done it a couple times, but apparently this
they're
time
like your fan.
Yeah, they're like no more. They're like shoes stay on the feet, and I'm like not really. But that's neither here or there. Main event, Sean Strickland, Israel Adesanya. First time Izzy's fighting Sean. We've kind of talked about it, but your prediction for this fight?
Israel Adesanya. I don't think it's gonna be like in the first round or anything like that. I mean, it could be. It could take him 10 seconds. Who knows? But I think it'll probably be like a little bit later, maybe like third or fourth round. I don't know.
How do you think he gets?
I think he's going to take his time. I don't think he's going to.
I don't know if I want that from Izzy though.
That's kind of what he does, though, don't you think?
Well, Robert Whitaker, he didn't take his time.
That's true. That is
Yeah.
true. Good
Robert
point.
Whitaker, Paulo Costa, he
Mm,
didn't take his time. It's
yeah,
I think he takes his time when he's unsure of what could happen on the other side, right? Yoel
which
Romero.
that might be the situation here,
Right,
you know?
right. Like, can you convince me before I let you go? Can you convince me that Sean Strickland has a chance to beat Israel Adesanya?
I think there's always a chance. I just don't. How many times have we seen Adesanya really like face adversity though? Like Pajeda, but look what Pajeda did to Sean. I mean, it was like not even.
Yeah, that was bad.
That was bad. That was really bad. And like, what is Sean's game plan gonna be here? I don't know.
Gonna go out there and fight.
Yeah, like he's not gonna wrestle. I mean, if he wrestled him, that would probably be the easiest path to victory. And Sean, isn't he a black belt in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, he did an interview with that Nina girl, Nina, who very, very popular on social media.
Yeah, I've seen her.
Yeah, and he was like, it doesn't work. It's in my trunk in my car. Shit doesn't work. All right.
I think I saw that.
Like what? All right.
Yeah, I
The
don't
black belt
know.
doesn't work. Are you using it?
Right. Yeah, well, that's the other thing too. You might have a black belt, but if you don't use it, like if you don't use it in MMA and implement the jujitsu and the grappling into MMA, then yeah, it really doesn't work. So, I don't know. I don't know. That would be the only thing I could think of that he could possibly do would be to try to take him down. But Izzy has really good takedown defense, and Sean isn't like huge for that division. So I feel like to have somebody really take Izzy down and keep him down would have to be something like really like big, strong, like Hamzat type of person or like Bo Nickel. I think would have to be grappling wise to be able to keep Izzy down long enough and do damage. Yeah, I don't think Sean is the guy. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how he would do it. I think honestly though, for Sean, just because I know he's probably not gonna wrestle, yeah, maybe just like catching him at the right time with something because he does have hands. We saw it with Abus, but Abus just had horrible cardio too, so it's hard to judge off that.
That's
And
the
we
thing.
know Izzy
Sean's got
has
great,
phenomenal cardio.
as is Izzy.
Um,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
has a chin too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless your name's Pajeda. But even then, like he absorbed some shots to be able to get that knockout on Pajeda. So yeah, it's just hard for me to imagine a scenario where Sean beats him. I don't know if he does. I'm gonna be in shock, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the MMA world will be too.
And I like Sean. I think Sean is a great fighter.
Thanks, Bre, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bre. Yeah.
You're going no fucking MMA. All right. Unlike all of you. Like I'm pretty sure that's the kind of shit Sean would say.
I know. I love it. He's hilarious.
He is.
But
He's
yeah.
unintentionally hilarious, and sometimes it's cringy, but it is what it is. And you mentioned black belts, so we must now be in agreement. Conor McGregor is going to go on a 10-fight win streak because he just got awarded his black belt, right? I said that with a straight face. So I'm trying not to
Oh my god. He's probably gonna try to get Habib to come out of retirement now. He's like, hey, I got a black belt now, buddy.
Right? They should set the betting lines for the Michael Chandler Conor McGregor press conference. Over under 2 minutes the first time Conor mentions he has a black belt.
Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, he's probably just gonna set it on the table as soon as he gets there. I honestly
it's gonna be great.
Yeah, Conor's something else.
He just gave the sport's biggest trash talker another thing to talk trash about.
I wonder if maybe that is one thing that he's been like trying to work on for leading up to this fight. I don't know.
I would have to believe it is.
I would hope so because Michael Chandler's got incredible wrestling, so he better be able to do something on the ground.
Another Missouri guy, and before we end it, I will tell you, since on the subject of black belts and you being from St. Louis, I'm going to sound like I'm giving him way too much credit, but since he is a friend of the show and mine, I can talk about it. Dean Thomas wrapping the black belt around Tyron Woodley after the Darren Till fight is one of my all-time favorite moments in the sport.
That was dope.
Yeah, that was dope. Your show is dope. Your work is dope. Bre,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for all your time. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was lengthy, but that's
No,
usually
it's all
a good
good.
thing. Um,
Yeah.
Go ahead and plug all your social media and everywhere that people can follow you.
Yeah, you can just follow me at Bre.Eckert, Eckert. That's my Instagram, and then from there you can find all my stuff. Yeah, I do a podcast every single week. I do the MMA one, and then I do interviews, and sometimes I'll do a solo episode. But I have a few interviews coming up. I've got a UFC fighter coming on soon. I've got BKFC fighter coming on soon. So got a lot of cool stuff in the works, and I'm hosting Fight Bananas Dana White Contender Series show. So tonight after the Contender Series and every Tuesday until the Contender Series is done, I will be doing that, and then I'm also doing the Game Bread Bare Knuckle MMA post show. So yeah, check me out on Fight Bananas too. But yeah, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, and I'm sorry, I got to squeeze one more question in here because I really, really, really respect all that you're doing. When I heard everything you were doing, I had to go back to this. Um, you do Contender Series. Laura Cinco will not be in attendance for Contender Series tonight because she'll be on the broadcast call of UFC 293. How awesome and how influential is Laura Cinco?
Oh my God, Laura Senko is my hero. Yeah. Uh, like if I could be someone, I would want to be Laura Senko. Like I freaking love her. Like she is so cool. Just like yeah, I've never seen like a woman. I mean, like, obviously there's Karen Bryant and there's Angela Hill. There's other, female analysts, but like she's gotten to the level where now she's commentating on pay-per-views. Like that's so huge. And that's so huge for women in MMA media too. And people like me who like want to get into commentary and doing stuff like that. Like it's really cool to see her on a freaking paper because it's been a long time, like her getting to this point.
Very long time. And then you'll have her, and I believe Megan Olivia will be there. So two very powerful women on
Yeah.
the call for UFC 293. Bre, your future is bright. Keep doing everything that you're doing.
Thank
I
you.
hope to have you on again in the future, and keep up the great work. And anytime you want me to share any of your work, just let me know. And you do great work, so I'd be happy to do it.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good rest.
Thank you.